America reeling from a surge in violence across the country. The president in Buffalo, New York today after the tragic mass shooting there that claimed the lives of 10 people. Biden honoring the victims while condemning the hateful attack and calling for more gun control.
What happened here is simple and straightforward. Terrorism. Terrorism. Domestic terrorism. White supremacy is a poison, and it's been allowed to fester and grow right in front of our eyes. We need to say as clearly and forcefully as we can that the ideology of white supremacy has no place in America. There are certain things we can do. We can keep assault weapons off our streets. We've done it before. I did it when we passed the crime bill last time, and violence went down, shootings went down.
Comes amid an enormous surge in violence over the weekend. 17 people were shot in a single incident in downtown Milwaukee. In Chicago, at least 33 people were shot and 5 fatally so. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot banning unaccompanied minors from Millennium Park after 6 p.m. in the wake of a 16-year-old's fatal shooting there. And gun homicides reaching their highest level in 25 years during the COVID pandemic. So a lot to get to on this particular topic and the rest of the show. Jesse, where do you land on there's the crime that happened, the massacre in Buffalo, and then there's this additional crime that we see all across the country. I'm not saying that they're the same, but you have this story that is so tragic up there, and the president goes to visit, and then you have these other stories where you don't get a visit.
Well, he plays peekaboo with hate crime, right? So if it's a black supremacist, closes his eyes. White supremacist, he goes beast mode and campaigns on it. Same thing with street crime. If it's black on black crime, he ignores it. But if there's a white police officer involved, he's getting the bullhorn out and he's in campaign mode. I was walking to work today, beautiful day here in New York, and I saw these junior high school kids. It's a black kid, white kid, Spanish kid, and they're all just holding each other's shoulders, walking down Fifth Avenue across from the park.
That's nice.
And it's just a nice thing to see. And then, you know, they graduate and they go to college and they get in the workforce and their minds just get poisoned by these politicians and pundits. Because that's what's happening. Joe Biden tries to make black people scared and white people feel guilty. It's this emotional grip that he tries to put on the country because it's good for Democrat Party politics. And the American people are waking up to this. I think we see, the more we study these crimes and how they're covered and how they're exploited by politicians, that these politicians are just trying to chop us up into different groups, pit us against each other, and just get away with everything they can for political power. We're done with it. And I don't like to be lectured by a guy like Joe Biden, this corrupt old-timer whose son uses the N-word, who pals around with segregationists and Klansmen, and who's had every single position on crime you could possibly imagine. He swoops in, and he's now the soul of the nation. Give me a break. On this whole thing about how this could have been stopped, New York has this red flag law. So this guy says he's going to shoot up a school and he's suicidal, and they interview him at the school, and then they send him to a psych ward, and the police interview him. I don't know. And they release him, and he goes and shoots up this whole shopping center. They didn't take away his gun. They didn't look what he was looking on at the internet. I mean, bang up job. Their red flag laws aren't even effective. Their gun laws aren't even effective. So you got to really just take a broader look at these things. This guy was radicalized on the internet during the COVID lockdowns, during these stupid Fauci lockdowns that did nothing. And his family missed it. The school missed it. The police missed it. We all missed it. And he's an ugly killer, and I hope he gets fried.
Geraldo.
They don't fry him in New York.
Well, they should.
Can I tell you about a dinner I had with President Trump in February 2018, the day after the Parkland school massacre? He and the First Lady had just visited the victims in the hospital. And he came to the dinner. He was rattled. At Mar-a-Lago, it was a private dinner. Eric and Don Jr. were there, and Laura. But it was just us, and we were really head-to-head. And the president asked, what can I do? I mean, those wounds were horrible. The rifle that Cruz had used to kill these 17 kids was these wounds that were torn, looked like war victims. And I said, you know, the kids, underage, why don't you pass a juvenile assault weapons ban? A juvenile assault weapons ban. If you can't buy a beer, you can't buy an AR. Why? If you can't drive a semi, you can't have an assault weapon. What's wrong with that? The president liked the idea. He said, I'm not afraid of the NRA. A couple of days passed, and it turns out he was afraid of the NRA. I think that it is impossible now to get any kind of meaningful gun control legislation passed. I think the country has gone crazy, drunk, We're hooked on weapons, more weapons now than there are Americans out there. What surprises me isn't how frequent these incidents of mass killings are. It is how infrequent they are, given the fact that there are so many weapons out there and the opportunity to put extended magazines and wear body armor and have a helmet, ballistic head to toe.
Well, I think that, though, that Emily gets to the point, though, that if we have these processes and either the family or the school alerts authorities, he goes to the hospital for a mental health evaluation. Nothing is put in his file. We know that during the COVID lockdown, he was increasingly isolated. He didn't want to even go to school when it opened. He decided to stay home. And then he goes and he buys a gun. When the owner of the gun shop does the background check, nothing comes up.
Right. I think what actually was the damning area in this particular situation was the opacity of those hospital records that to this day they still refuse to confirm or give any transparency into. So if anything, I think given the high stakes consequences, the possibility of such, then it doesn't matter if he's a juvenile. Those records should be absolutely available to law enforcement or those running a background checks. Geraldo, are you saying there's more weapons in this country than Americans? To me, is exactly why we need to support those who are lawfully owning them and support those who are putting their lives on the line every day to try to control crime rather than simply regulate it and take it away from those law-abiding citizens. And I agree with you, Jesse, that this president has been all over the place. And even right now, when he's talking about issuing an executive order for police reform or for criminal justice, he's absolutely in all the wrong arenas. When 7 to 8 out of every 10 gunshot victims, homicide victims, are young African-American men, why then is he focusing only on the gun regulator being for racist, bias, hate crimes? That's the tiniest portion. And if you really care about minorities in this country, then you would care about the black-on-black crime that is plaguing our inner cities, that the DAs who are feckless and incompetent are doing nothing to try to prevent, because they're all just paying lip service to this progressive woke left that don't know what they're talking about.
Greg, do you want to zoom out about the way the crime is approached, the way people look at it?
Zoom out.
Zoom in.
I shall zoom out. No, well, there are 330, 340 million people in America, but there's only one president. And this president says that American democracy is its greatest danger in 80 years. Who's president? He is. He has the White House, he has the House, he has the Senate, and we have the greatest threat to American democracy while he's president, when he was claiming to unify us and to create a sense of normalcy. So what is going on? And why is there a statistic of 78% of America thinking we're going in the wrong direction? It's him. He has replaced patriotism with identity politics. We're not having it anymore. This has nothing to do with the crime in Buffalo. This has to do how people are so frustrated. So what do you see after Buffalo or any of these major mass murders? You don't see the failed policies that led to the crime, right? The Buffalo shooter was pre-detected and imprisoned and let go. So why is that in common with all the other crimes that we mentioned? We put a lot of these people behind bars and they're out. He's just like all the other criminals, all of the other benefactors of the no cash bail. And the media and the Democrats lack the ability to handle multiple variables because they lack a mental dashboard. They're like a pilot that doesn't fly by the controls. So whenever there's a problem, they only see what's around them, right? They only see their peers in the newsroom. Those are the people that they listen to. The reason why the Five has been consistently successful in predicting almost every major issue is because we possess a mental dashboard. We are able to understand statistics, probability, law enforcement experience. So when we saw no cash bail come out, whether it was 4 or 5 years ago, we said, this thing's gonna suck. And you know why? Because of recidivism, because the probability of somebody recommitting crimes. The statistics show this, right? Law enforcement experience tells you this. But none of the progressives and none of the media actually looked at these statistics because they don't have a mental dashboard, right? They're a plane flying blind with one variable, and that variable is only what can be construed as racism. So what they do is they let criminals out because keeping them in is racist. They justify riots as a form of protest because if you don't say that, that's racist. And then what you have is a Ferguson effect, which causes a decline in arrests, an increase in smash and grab crimes, murder, gang crime. All of these things result from an inability to see the root causes, these variables. We have been talking about this for so long. We understand this. The problem is when you operate by by one statistic and one belief and one belief only, and one filter, you are going to be wrong. The people should be behind bars aren't, or institutionalized, they aren't. That they justify riots as retribution. That ultimately leads to so much more crime. But the worst thing about it is Biden is incapable and incoherent to understand this. He doesn't even have a single variable. The only variable he operates now is on the identity politics, race, and that's all he can say. And that's why when people listen to him, they don't listen. They don't listen. 80% of the country says, dude, he's taken us to a cliff. And I think Tucker was pretty damn good last night when he talked about Rwanda. That where can identity politics take you? Doesn't take you any place good. So that's my
Can I just add one little thing?
Here we go.
I think whataboutism leads us nowhere. What about Chicago with 33 shot and over the weekend 5 killed? What about Philly, the 2 pregnant women? What about the Bronx, the 11-year-old? What about? That does not alter the fact that what happened in Buffalo was a white, racist, mass murder of mostly black people. And everything else is true that you said, Greg?
But I didn't even say that. There was no whataboutism in there. What you're doing is you're redefining what I said, Geraldo. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. What I'm talking about is context. If you don't like context, that's your issue.
Well, if you don't like to talk about white racism, then the rest of it isn't.
What did I say? No. I'm talking about how a crime could have been prevented and how all of these could have prevented. That's the string in all these. I never disowned the fact that the guy is racist.
Right. And I think that the fact that all of these things could have been prevented is what is frustrating, and why you have 75 or more people in America saying that the country's going in the wrong direction.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.